Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 177 of Shelf Viewers. Today we'll be going over the Seabed Temple arc of Black Clover. Now this arc starts off with us seeing as all of the Black Bulls go on a little beach trip. And while they're here, we see as they are in fact here to go to the underwater temple so they can acquire a magic stone, which, as we know, the Eye of the Midnight Sun are searching for, because they want to get to it before they can. So we see this, and we see as everyone's kind of joining their phone in the sun, but we ultimately also see as Noelle is training her, her magic control abilities, because she is the one who has to transport them to the underwater temple, or the, what's it entitled? The Seabed Temple, even though it's mostly referred to as the underwater temple throughout this arc. But yeah, so we see this. And she starts to train and everything, and starts to get down a little bit, but she's ultimately kind of failing to begin with. But then we see as she encounters this character by the name of Kahono. And Kahono comes from this land beneath the sea, and we see as she ends up giving Noelle some pointers, and we see as she also trains with Asta, and ultimately she ends up getting it down to where we can see as she is able to go beneath the sea and transport all the Black Bulls. So we see as all the Black Bulls end up getting transported down to this Seabed temple, and ultimately they end up running in with the high priest of this temple. His name is Gifso, though we don't learn that until like way late on into the arc. But yeah, so Gifso, we see as he ends up introducing himself and all that, and ultimately he reveals that to acquire the magic stone they must play this game, which is a 9-on-9 battle royale, where the Black Bulls will be facing up against the, assailants within the Seabed temple. We see is ultimately Gifso and Yami are sent into this little spectating room because Yami was deemed likely too powerful for this, but Gifso believes it's going to be a kind of wiping the floor, because he believes that he learns from Yami that all of the members of the Black Bulls are I believe technically junior Magic Knight ranks, and he's like, oh, all my people are above intermediate, so you'll be obliterated. But we see as it starts off, and that is not the case. We in fact see as in the first bout of fights, the Black Bulls get a nine individuals on their team to 5 on the other. Now just kind of briefly go into the rules of this kind of battle royale. So like I said, it's 9-on-9, and whoever ends up having the most players left on their team within an hour ends up winning. And we see also as Gifso is allowed to, use trap magic throughout all of the game to just kind of throw in a little wrench here and there. But yeah, so after that, we kind of see as it starts to play a little bit more. Ultimately, we do see as the Black Bulls do have a little bit of trouble, because we see as Charmy is taken out by this melodic singing by one of the members. And so she's unconscious, but she's not dead or anything, or kicked out, really completely kicked out of the game, because if she wakes up, her points go back toward the Black Bulls. But yeah, so we also see as some other of the assailants are taken down, and we see as things kind of continue to progress, and ultimately we see as then, who is it? Kahono, who is, as we know, the one who helped Noelle train her magic, ends up encountering Noelle herself here. And in this, we see as Kahono is like, yo, we are still friends, but I want to fight you. And Noelle's like, I can't fight you with my friend, but she was like, okay, but we still need to fight, because friends are people who can fight and keep on smiling about it. So we see as they fight, and then we see as Asta ends up running into this character by the name of Kiado, and he's the brother of Kahono, and ultimately they end up fighting as well. We see that Asta is having trouble fighting him because Kiado has, undetectable ki, really, and this is due to the fact that, as we learn later, that Kiado and Kahono are both, prospective performers. They want to go onto the overworld. If they win the games, they've seen that Gifso has promised that he would allow them to go up to the overworld and become performers, become idols, and spread their music everywhere. It's music and dancing. And we see that Kiado is able to hide his ki because he's dancing, and this perpetual dance ends up putting him into a trance-like state where his ki then becomes undetectable. And so we see as then Asta tries to combat this by allowing his body to essentially become magic and to kind of imitate what Kiado is doing and kind of get into a trance. And we see as they continue to fight. But then also we see as Noelle and Kahono end up having a little bit longer of a fight as well. And then we also see as Magna and Luck end up running into one of the most powerful member of this entourage, which is Geo. Geo is the son of Gifso. So we see as Geo, Luck, and Magna kind of prepare to face off, but then suddenly something comes out of nowhere. Spatial magic and Veto ends up appearing, one of the third eye members of the Eye of the Midnight Sun, the beastly man himself. And so, you see as he comes out, he starts putting the smackdown on. First, he wipes out Geo, and Geo goes flying. We don't really see anything for Geo for like the rest of the arc, and we then see as Magna and Luck are left to face up against Geo. And so in this, we see then as they prepare to fight, and they're going and they're doing pretty good. They're giving their all, and they're standing pretty toe to toe, but they're not doing much damage on Veto. And then this ultimately leads to them kind of getting whittled down to the point where they get desperate. They're like, okay, we're gonna have to hit him with all of our power and all of our magic. So they end up pulling out this sick like combined like attack on this panel. It looks very sick. It honestly might end up being the thumbnail. And we see they pull this out, but it does nothing. And ultimately they are defeated by Veto. And so during this, we see as both Yami and Gifso have noticed that the Eye of the Midnight Sun are here now, and Yami's like, yo, you gotta let me out of here. But Gifso's like, I don't really have the ability to let you out, but Yami ends up showing his dark magic use and ends up breaking a hole in the wall. But then we also see that their area that they were in was already spread in spatial magic by the Eye of the Midnight Sun, so they were unable to escape there anyways. Since Gifso technically couldn't let Yami out because they weren't allowed out and from the like administrator room until after the game had concluded, but because of Yami's dark magic, he could have got out unless the spatial magic user from the Eye of the Midnight Sun hadn't been there. But yeah, so we see this, and then ultimately we also get to see as now that Gifso has announced to the entire game that it is no longer a fight between the people of the Seabed Temple and the Black Bulls. It is instead a fight for them against the Eye of the Midnight Sun. And if they end up being the Eye of the Midnight Sun, they win. So we see as this plays out, and ultimately, Asta and Kiato end up running to go and fight Veto, and we also see as Noel and Kahono end up heading their way there as well. But they're slightly behind Kiato and Asta. And then also we get to see more of our Black Bulls going about things. We see as Vanessa actually did this earlier on, but she was able to beat one of the members of the Seabed Temple by herself because she's a competent mage when she's not blackout drunk. Or a mage, whatever you want to call it. Enchantress. But yeah, so after this we also get to see as why am I blanking on his name? Finral actually ends up having a fight, and we see here that he ends up getting like entrapped by a member of the Eye of the Midnight Sun, and it's like this vine trap thing, and ultimately he gets trapped along with Gray. Now Gray is the member of the team who can like transform into anything essentially, and they are just barely in the side of Charmy because they would have gone to find Charmy and we're kind of unable to, but ultimately they ended up finding her. And in this we see as Finral ends up telling Gray, yo, turn to a slab of meat, and then Finral ends up yelling, yo, Charmy, someone's trying to steal your meat, or trying to eat your meat. So we see then as Charmy ends up waking up and deals very handedly with these Eye of the Midnight Sun goons, and ultimately this ends up leading to them capturing some of these Eye of the Midnight Sun henchmen, and they then begin to head towards where Beto is fighting and all of that, but they don't really have a plan for how they're going to go about this. But yeah, so with that, we also, after the transformation of Gray into the meat, we see that she is having some difficulty. Well, she has actually kind of gone very low on her magic and is now unable to transform anything from her original self. I wish you to see Gray's original body here, and she's a woman. And I mean, that was too big of a reveal, but it was cool to see after like 70-something chapters. But yeah, so we get to see this, and then ultimately we get to focus on the fight between Asta, Kiato, and Veto. And so this starts off, and they have to fight together, obviously, and they are doing pretty well, but they're still not making any big dents in Veto. And we actually get to see as Kiato is beat away, and he gets knocked, like, he at one point even loses a leg, and we see as Asta's been left to fight against Veto himself. And Asta's doing good, but he just can't really do what is needed. Like, he can't do enough by himself against Veto. So he's going to need some dire support here, and ultimately he ends up getting beaten away as well with some severe damage. But then we see as Kahono and Noel pull up. And we see as Kahono ends up trying pretty, I guess, well against Veto, but she ultimately gets beat with much ease. And during this, we see as Veto ends up crushing her throat, which obviously kind of cripples her music career in the future. But then we see as Noel, honestly, is like irritated by this. She's obviously like blown out of proportion. She's just enraged by what has happened to her friend Kahono. And we then see as she flashes back on when Kahono told her that she could not attack people because she had inherent a desire to control. Well, she was controlling her magic, but she was controlling it to not hit people. So Noelle ends up releasing this control, ends up building up enough magic because she has the latent potential for it, and blasts Veto with the first major attack we see, and it takes off his whole right side of the body, looking like Toji Fushiguro. So yeah, we see this, and then we see as the chapter ends there, and then we end up heading off to the next point where we then see as he ends up using this magic to completely reform his arm, like this pentagram, not pentagram, but like eldritch, old, like runic spiral, not spiral, but circle ends up coming out of nowhere and reforms his arm. And they're like, whoa, what type of magic is this? No magic can do that. And then we end up getting some brief backstory on Veto. Now, Veto and Licht, as far as we know, are demons. So they are of the demon, I guess, people. And we learned that the demon people were originally eradicated by the Wizard King and his not assailants, but like comrades in a very prior ancient time. And so we know that Veto was actually a very innocent young child, and him and Licht were friends, and ultimately, after the destruction of their species, they ended up surviving and went on to create the Eye of the Midnight Sun. And this is, as we know, the Eye of the Midnight Sun's motive is to eradicate, like, the prejudices of the kingdom, the Clover Kingdom. But they plan on doing this kind of like improper ways. They're awarding punishment with punishment, or awarding prejudice with prejudice. So it's kind of a faulty system of, I guess, revenge. But yeah, so we see that, we get to, like I said, get to see Veto is in fact a demon. He ends up, does he? No, he doesn't open his third eye yet. But yeah, so we see as he ends up reforming his arm, revealing that he is a demon and all that, and we learn that the Eye of the Midnight Sun higher-ups are likely all demons. We know for a fact that Licht and Veto are, but we don't know about the other ones just yet. But yeah, so we see this. And then the fight continues. Since Noel was unable to kill him with this, we see as Asta once again gets back up and starts trying to fight, but he is still unsuccessful in his endeavors to take down Veto, because Veto is just that powerful. So ultimately we end up seeing as Finral and Vanessa end up pulling up. Vanessa, like I said, she dealt with some Seabed Temple goons prior. But they all end up pulling up, and this is where we get to see the peak of this battle. This battle will become very interesting here. But we see as they are trying to use their magic to help, and they are most certainly good supporters, because what the plan ends up coming down to is Asta is able to get back up once more, and in this, they end up forming a plan. They're like, yo, okay, Finral, since you have spatial magic, we can use you to teleport Asta around, and then we can use Vanessa's threads to help move Asta's already very badly injured body. And we see as this works wonders on Veto. We see as Asta's going around and he's unable to really, Veto's really unable to compensate for how fast Asta's moving and how, I guess, unpredictable it is. So we see as he's going around and everything, and ultimately we do see as Veto is able to catch up with it, actually not catch up with it, but he ultimately is able to create his own strategy, and we see as Asta is allowed to stab Veto through with his slender sword. And Veto's like, I allowed you to do that, and then he starts wounding Asta, and Swain ends up breaking Asta's arms, but then Vanessa's like, you know what, I will use my threads to move your arms. So we see as they start bouncing around again, all of that good stuff, and Veto ultimately is unable to stand with this, and will, I guess, keep up with this. So we see then Asta uses his big blade to slash like a whole line to like almost the lower abdomen in Veto. So we see here as Veto is presumably defeated. And it was done in a very intelligent way. Like, that's one thing I love about the characters in Black Clover so far, is they have immense battle IQ. Like the the Black Bulls have very high battle IQ, so it's really cool to see. But yeah, so one thing we got to see a little bit of in this fight was we got to see a bit of Vanessa's backstory, which wasn't really much. We just learned that she fled from her village that she lived in. We learned more about Finral. Now, Finral is of the family of Vaude, and we see that he was kind of looked down upon when he was a young child because he only had spatial magic, which isn't really offensive. And we see as he was compared to his younger brother, who was had very powerful offensive magic, and he actually became the second in command of Golden Dawn. And we then see as he kind of ultimately ended up running away from his family to run away from all of his problems and everything. And he was ultimately recruited by Yami because Yami was like, yo, I need some help with transportation. But yeah, so But ultimately also did up in revealing that he knew that Finral had his own special way of fighting. And we in fact learned that he did, and this was the perfect application of it. So we see as Veto is, like I said, ultimately beaten, but he in fact is not. He ends up opening this third eye that he has to awaken a bunch more magic in him, and he starts raising to prepare for a self-destruction. So we see as he's raising, and ultimately we then see as Yami was in fact able to break through from the administrative room. And this was from slashing the entirety of the Seabed Temple in half. So he was able to escape. Gets down here, we see as Veto's preparing to explode, but you know what Yami does? He just slashes that jaw, bisects bro vertically down the middle. And yeah, so that is the end of Veto. So now we see as everyone's kind of like, oh yeah, we beat him, yippee, yoo-ha, hooray. And then we see as Nero actually ends up coming to Asta with the Magic Stone, and he has it, and obviously they get it, and they're like, yo, this is the Magic Stone. And then we see as Gifso ends up coming up, he's like, yeah, after obviously having consoled or met up with Kahona and Kyoto, which he needed to do since he's their grandfather, and their dad's out here unconscious somewhere. Well, I don't know if he's their dad, but their uncle, something like that. But yeah, so we see ultimately is he ends up coming over, and they end up coming over with the stone, and he's like, yeah, I kind of like read your thoughts, and was like, yeah, I knew that was what you wanted. So ultimately ends up giving it to him, and we see as everyone's kind of recovering, everything's going happy, lucky. We see as Noel and Kahono end up giving each other their goodbyes. We learn that Kahono is actually will be able to heal her vocal cords. It'll just take some time. And we kind of see everything's happy, yippee, like I said, afterwards. And we also get to see that Kyoto has a bit of a crush on Noel, but Kahono is able to recognize, I believe Noel's, I guess, not really available. But yeah, so like I said, that's kind of the major portions of it. Then we progress to kind of the build-up for the next arc, where we see as they end up going back to the Black Bull headquarters, where we see as Yami ends up planning to go and speak with the Wizard King about the success of their mission, return the Magic Stone to him. And Asta ends up getting recruited to go along this trip along with Charmy and Fenrir for transportation. And they end up going up there, and we see as Yami ends up giving the stone to the Wizard King. We get to see also as Asta is commended by the Wizard King for his immense performance, and he's like, I can't wait to see where else you go with this, and I know you will probably achieve. Well, he doesn't say he will know. He knows that Asta will achieve the dream, but he's like, I have faith that you will achieve your dream and all that. And also we see as the Wizard King ends up grabbing up Asta, or not Asta, but Charmy, and he's like, I didn't know you had a kid this age, Yami, and he's like, I don't. But yeah. We also see a little bit more of a glimpse at Yami and Julius's backstory connection, and we in fact see that Julius was in fact the one who promoted Yami to the level of a Magic Knight. But yeah, or selected him as a Magic Knight at least. So then after that, we end up seeing is Mark end up calling in with a transponder, like magic call, and with this we see that there is an attack from the Demon King, not Demon Kingdom, but the Diamond Kingdom going on at the city of Kyton or Kitten, whatever you want to call it. And they have brought in some pretty elite force. They brought in 3 of the 8 shining generals of the Diamond Kingdom, which are essentially the Magic Knights captains of that realm. And that is where the chapter ends. So I love this arc. Like I said, that's kind of where the chapter arc ends. But like, I love this arc. It was great. Like, it was phenomenal all around. Like, I loved seeing it. I loved seeing the combined fight of Magna and Luck against Beto. Like, Luck is slowly becoming like one of my favorite characters, because I just love how he's like a berserker. Like, though he's not like an overpowered entity, he is just for the fight. It's awesome. He reminds me of Kenpachi Saraki. But yeah, so also one thing I loved in, I believe it was the cover for chapter 70, we get to see his Asa's like standing on like the ground and looking up at like a tall kingdom. And it really reminded me of that the panel in Berserk where Griffith is looking up at the kingdom. I believe it's in his vision a little bit before the eclipse, or possibly during the eclipse, and it just really reminded me of that. Like, it absolutely had to have been inspired by that, because it was so close. But I love how it shows Asa's kind of lofty dreams up there for the kingdom, but he is looking and it is bright. But yeah, I just really enjoyed this arc. It was great. It is probably my favorite all around, because I love to see an antagonist actually die, because I love Veto. Veto is probably, from what we've seen, that we haven't seen much of the Eye of the Midnight Sun. He's probably my favorite character from the Eye of the Midnight Sun, and I loved that he in fact got killed. I love that they now show that Black Clover characters can die, even if they are just an antagonist. But yeah, like I said, that's all there really was for the Seabed Temple arc of Black Clover, and that's all we already have for episode 177 of Show for You. So thank you very much for watching.